Friday again. Welcome to Questions with Father Luke. I'm Father Luke of Covenant Anglican Church in San Marcos, Texas. And today's question is, how do we show love to our enemies without affirming sin? Well, there are three weighty words in this question that we need to define: love, enemies, and sin. We're going to take them in reverse order before jumping into the actual answer of the question, right? So, in short, sin is rebellion against God and His standards, against His rule, His way. So there are particular things, right? Words, thoughts, and deeds, done and left undone, as we pray in our Anglican prayer of confession. There are particular things that can be sins. But the Bible develops the idea, the theme of sin, as something being much deeper, as more fundamental than just mere actions. See, sin in the Scriptures is seen as the corruption of human nature. And it makes us hostile towards God and enslaved to passions and desires that we have, as well as being unwilling to submit to God's known will. So naturally then, we are bent towards this opposition to God, and we're enslaved to selfish desires. Humans then often sin against one another, right? We form these prejudices and unhealthy rivalries that put us at odds with other people, especially when our core values or our priorities are incompatible with others. We can call each other names. We engage in petty actions to annoy them or to hurt them. And because of sin, we become enemies of one another. Enemies are those who are set against the good, the flourishing of another. Now, love is different, right? Love is this wide word that can refer to romantic desire or feelings, all the way to this deep sense of commitment and care for somebody else, somebody who is outside of ourselves. It's the opposite of what enemies do, right? Enemies don't seek. In fact, they seek to stop the flourishing and the good of others. Love, though, seeks the good and the flourishing of others. So loving one's enemy is not this natural thing. It's supernatural. In fact, that's what the Apostle Paul tells us, that we got to look to God in order to see an example of what loving our enemies looks like. Because while we were enemies, Christ died for us. God loved us and reconciled us to Himself. That's what He says in Romans chapter 5, verse 10. He says, "For if while we were enemies of God, we were reconciled to God by the death of His Son, much more now that we are reconciled shall we be saved by His life." And so while we were enemies of God, God did something with great love, moved towards us in order to redeem us through Jesus Christ. It's only as we are aware of God's deep, abiding love for us that we can show love to those who choose to be our enemies. And so the question is, how do we do this? How do we show love to our enemies without then affirming the wrong that they're doing and the sin that they're doing? Well, again, Jesus is our model, right? He was gathering around Himself people of all different kinds of flavors and walks of life, those who were religious and irreligious. And He shows us how to pray for those who sin against us. Jesus, as He was being nailed to the cross, cried out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Now, as best we can, we've got to surrender the motives, the thoughts, and the actions of others to God, recognizing that the sin in their lives, right, or the sin that's in their life causes them to sin against us, but it's also a sin against God. That they are deceived, even if they are intent and with intentionality coming at us as enemies, right, with anger or with actions. Ultimately, they don't realize what they're doing, right? They are so deceived to think that that is right, that that is good for their souls, that that is good for them. And so as best we can, we have to bring their motives, their actions, their words to God. Now, this is not at all easy. It's not at all simple. And we've got to guard against putting ourselves on some kind of pedestal against them, assuming that we don't sin or that we're just better. With humility and in the midst of Christian community, with our eyes fixed on Jesus, we can endure the hatred and the harsh actions or words of others. But more than enduring it, we can pray, we can serve and love our enemies without affirming their sin against us, which is ultimately a sin against God. It's a great question, hard to deal with, but y'all come and visit us, and we'd love to continue the conversation here at Covenant Anglican Church. Blessings to you. Talk to you later.